Hey there, my name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about role-playing games, and lots of them. I have mentioned them a few times, and now it's finally time to talk about a draconic race called the Spellscales. First appearing in 3.5 editions Races of the Dragon published in 2006, this book contains what I consider to be the true genesis of the Dragonborn player character, as well as information that greatly expanded on kobolds and half-dragons. In a nutshell, Spellscales are draconic humanoids with an artistic flair, intelligence, a talent for sorcery, and a great hunger for new experiences. They look quite distinct from Dragonborn and half-dragons, and personally, I think they are a great addition to the lineup of draconic humanoids that make a lot of sense. Why do they make sense? Well, they are the answer to the question about draconic blood and sorcerers. For this video, since there really is only one main source of information about the Spellscales, I'll be quoting directly from Races of the Dragon in parts, and this is what it has to say about their parentage and legitimacy as a distinct race. It has long been known that many sorcerers have draconic blood in their veins. For the majority of these individuals, their spellcasting abilities are often the only hint of their draconic heritage, but sometimes the evidence is clearer. Occasionally, when two humanoid sorcerers produce a child, or a particularly powerful sorcerer has a child with a non-sorcerer, the infant displays decidedly draconic features and physiology. This child is, in fact, a spellscale, rather than a member of either of the parents' races. Spellscales are, however, a distinct race. They breed true among themselves, and if one parent is a spellscale, their offspring will always be a full-blooded spellscale, regardless of the race of other parent. Comparisons between them and Dragonborn are inevitable, but where the Dragonborn exhibit more of the tooth and claw and elemental power of the dragon, the Spellscales embody their ego, individuality, and their role as creatures of magic. Regardless of their parent race, all Spellscales stand about 4 feet 7 and 5 foot 7 for the males, and between 5 feet to 6 foot 1 for the females. Body weight is a bit leaner than humans. It's rare for males to be heavier than 106 pounds and females heavier than 116 pounds, but there's a couple of good reasons for this aside from their short stature. Spellscales tend to neglect their physical needs. They skip meals and rely on magic rather than muscle to achieve the same results. For this reason, they commonly have a lower constitution score than a human. They also mature faster, starting out much smaller than a normal humanoid infant and reaching adulthood by the age of 12. So they don't tend to put on a whole lot of muscle, and they don't have a metabolism that puts a lot of fat on their frame. This is nice when it comes to eating as much rich food as they want, but it also means they don't have those reserves of energy if they are faced with starvation. So a human will live longer without food than a spellscale will every time. If you want a perfect example of the average build of a Spellscale adventurer, you don't have to look any further than the late music icon Prince. He was 5'2" and weighed about 120 pounds. He was also one hell of a flamboyant dresser, and that is also a defining trait of the Spellscales. If you added a fine covering of lustrous and intricately coloured scales, distinctive draconic ears, some fine markings on the face, and eyes that tend to reflect torchlight a bit like a cat, Prince essentially was a spellscale. Oh, the thing about the eye thing is because of the tapetum lucidum, which means bright tapestry coverlet in Latin. Most animals that have a tapetum lucidum in their eyes are mammals, although some reptiles, amphibians and invertebrates also have this reflective membrane. In dark environments, light sources bouncing off this causes the eyeshine effect that can appear orange, yellow, green or blue depending on the animal and often its age. Some animals have eyes that glow more brightly at night than others. However, there is a trade-off for improved night vision. The animals that can produce the brightest eyeshine have fewer cone photoreceptor cells in their eyes. As a result, they have limited colour vision or may be completely colourblind. Such is not the case for humanoids with a tapetum lucidum in D&D, but I thought you might find that bit of biology interesting. Spellscales have 60-foot dark vision. Makes me wonder if my deep gnome player character should be colourblind. Anyway, although they are humanoid in every way, and their parents, if not spellscales, were most likely members of other humanoid races, for the purposes of determining all effects, particularly magical effects and such that rely on the type of creature, spellscales count as dragons. Thus, an arrow of dragon slaying is also deadly to them, but they can also more easily pass through wards and circles that dragons create to block the passages of any but their own kind, and creatures such as kobolds will treat spellscales quite a bit differently to other races. Spellscales might be a bit confused when a human adventurer tells them of the evil nature of kobolds. From a spellscale's point of view, they're lovely, industrious, and helpful, clever little creatures. If a spellscale acts as a spokesman for an adventuring party, kobolds will pose no great threat. However, they would never go against the orders of an actual dragon who has told them that the spellscale is their foe. Their draconic blood is just as intensely magical as a dragon's. At the end of each long rest, a spellscale will meditate on their blood and evoke an aspect of one of their draconic gods. Which one is entirely up to the player, but it should reflect of the needs and, most importantly, the emotions of the spellscale character at that moment. Each meditation is different, and someone who is very familiar with the spellscale will grow to learn what aspect is being invoked just by what the spellscale does shortly after they rise from sleep. Sometimes spellscales will get others involved in these meditations as a kind of a bonding of friendship, but only spellscales and I suppose other dragon-blooded sorcerers can truly appreciate the process. The various aspects of the gods provide different benefits, and each one is pretty simple to include in the game, but more on those in just a moment. Spellscales dread the very idea of a beholder's anti-magic eye. For them, magic flows through them and they are aware of it every waking moment of their days. They have a deep fascination for it and spend many hours in self-reflection, honing their feelings, intuition, and understanding of their relationship with it and how they can shape it. Their biological connection to magic shapes their entire culture and their individual idiosyncrasies. This innate feel for the flow and pull of magic and their need to be constantly adapted to it is part of what they call following one's blood. You'll often hear this phrase among spellscales, and it has some interesting flow-on effects in their culture. Of course, all cultures start with the family, and spellscales have strong family ties, particularly so since members of the family can at times have very conflicting worldviews and current activities, but they'll put these aside when it comes to family matters every single time. We have all been teenagers and understand a parent's frustration as their kid is convinced they're going to be a great violin player, so the parent spends a lot of money on a violin and such only to see it gathering dust on a shelf as the kid loses interest in that in favour of their next great fascination. This is exactly what spellscales are like for their entire life. Although this seems a fickle and shallow existence, from the spellscale's point of view, it's anything but. Their interests, philosophies, and feelings may be more mercurial than other races, but that doesn't make them less real or somehow disingenuous. If they want to be a famous violin player and someone violently opposes their goal, they're just as liable to kill for that goal as someone who has been working towards it their entire life, not just the last 3 months. Spellscales can be intense people, as you can imagine. Their love lives can also be quite a roller coaster. They tend to have a lot of diverse relationships in their life, and a venerable spellscale at the age of 140 is still quite likely to fall passionately in love and have a wild affair, which is something that a dwarf finds absolutely bizarre, but more on a relationship with other races in a moment. Role-playing a spellscale, there are a few traits that you can include that are commonplace among them. First, they don't apologise for anything. The best you will get is them telling you that they regret the misfortune of others, but they don't ever spontaneously apologise for anything they do. They live in the now, they act with intention, and if their actions have regrettable consequences, so be it. They don't go around telling people they would have done something differently. They didn't, and they wouldn't have done the same thing given the same chance, so why lie about it? They also don't explain their actions to others after the fact. Things happened, the past is done, the present requires constant attention. If pressed to explain themselves, they'll either be brutally honest or lie outrageously and somewhat mockingly. They don't discipline or punish their children for their actions. Such behaviour only results in disaster and rebellion, so they will simply offer insight, provide resources, and urge their child to be careful. Children's games among the spellscales tend to revolve around games of make-believe and roleplay, each child taking on different imaginary roles. They also have games of leader for the day, where one is randomly picked to choose all activities for the day. This is also exactly how spellscale communities govern themselves. A black box is filled with silver beads representing each adult in the population, and one is swapped out for a golden bead. Once per year they will draw a bead, and whoever gets the gold one is the leader for the rest of the year. Whatever they say goes until the next election. The only rules being they will have an election each year, and any spellscale is free to leave the community if they happen to not like the current leadership. Otherwise, you never really know what sort of situation you're walking into when dealing with the spellscales living in their own little quarter of a town or city. There may be next to no governance at all, or the current leader may be something of a tyrant. For the spellscales, they think this method is perfect. Even in places where city leaders keep strict control on citizens, the spellscales will always have their own leadership, either openly or in secret. Such common rituals seem to be islands of stability in a sea of transience for the spellscales, and individuals similarly have little rituals they maintain. So, for example, a spellscale will always eat their food in a very specific way, or only eat food created by magic. They might visit a certain location each year. They may only answer a question with another question, or include some aspect of chance and gambling in everything they do. But again, these personal rituals will change throughout the spellscale's life. For a role player and their spellscale character, this doesn't conflict with the goals of their adventuring group, or that's not the intention of this aspect of their race. Their mercurial nature, living without apology for their actions, and shifting fascinations take place gradually. A spellscale is just as capable of sticking to a plan and making a personal compromise for the team as any other player character. It's not an excuse to be a disruptive player at the table. It's supposed to be fun quirks that make spellscales interesting and quirky characters to play and to play alongside of. Okay, let's take a look at these Dragon Blood quickening meditations and the effects they have for the purposes of game mechanics. The meditations don't need to take very long at all, only a minute or so, though the spellscales may wrap this in a bit of extended ritual, for each dragon god has different benefits, and although we're talking about dragon gods here, this is not really a prayer or a granted power. It has nothing to do with the dragon gods themselves. It's just a way that the spellscale focuses on and enhances aspects of their draconic heritage. So if your spellscale happens to be a cleric devoted to a deity, there's no conflict of faith here. For more information about the dragon gods, I have a video about them. Link is on the screen for you right now. Obviously, some of the draconic gods have a very different alignment than a particular spellscale, but the spellscale will try to include all of the gods at least once each per year. Some will be clear favourites of others. Others will only rarely be a vote. All of them and their effects within the spellscale have their uses though. Meditating on Bahamut, the king of good dragons, enhances the spellscale's ability to oppose evil creatures. 3 times between the end of the meditation and their next long rest, the spellscale can enhance a single target or area of effect damaging spell to do an additional 2d6 damage to any evil being affected by that spell. Meditating on Tiamat, Queen of Evil Dragons, has the same effect as that of Bahamut, except it does 2d6 damage to good creatures. Meditating on Garrix, the All-Destroyer, enhances the use of the empowered spell metamagic option, giving 2 free uses of it until the spellscale's next long rest. As per usual, the spell can be empowered even if another metamagic enhancement has already been used with it. Meditating on Falazur, the Night Dragon, also known as the Reaver, allows the spellscale to use the quickened or twinned spell metamagics at only half the usual sorcery point cost until the spellscale's next long rest. Meditating on Chronepsis, the Silent, also known as the Guardian of the Lost, allows the spellscale advantage on all perception checks for listening for sounds, and unlimited use of the subtle spell metamagic before their next long rest. Meditating on Astalabor, the Horde Mistress, gives the spellscale advantage on all checks when appraising the value of any item and allows them to cast spells without the need of any material components until their next long rest. This is a fairly popular meditation, I imagine. Meditating on Halal, the chaotic good dragon goddess of humour, inventiveness and pleasure, enhances the spellscale's natural charisma, giving them advantage on all charisma-based checks and allows free use of the quickened spell metamagic before the next long rest. Traditionally, spellscales would have +2 to their charisma and -2 to their constitution, but play it by ear. Meditating on Io, the Eternal, God of Creation, gives the spellscale 1 free use of the heightened spell metamagic and unlimited use of the extended spell metamagic before their next long rest. Meditating on Tamara, the Merciful, allows unlimited use of the Careful spell metamagic until the spellscale takes their next long rest. Meditating on Astarinian, the Trickster, allows the spellscale advantage on all disguise checks until their next long rest, and they get to use Counterspell as well, though it still has the same cost in spell slots as per usual. Meditating on Lendis, the Scales of Justice, allows the spellscale to have advantage on all concentration checks until their next long rest. Now, these are just my best approximate conversions of the effects from earlier editions of Dungeons & Dragons, and even in the source material there's nothing official on another dragon god, Sardior, mainly because his status as a god is slightly murky, but I think there is a legit place for him in the Spellscale's meditations, in which case, given Sardior being god of the gem dragons and the portfolios of secrets, the night and psychic power, perhaps some enhancement to stealth or free use of a low-level psychic spell would work quite well. I'll leave that that up to you. Each blood quickening ritual is tailored to the theme of each god, and it's a good opportunity to roleplay the Spellscale's unique worldview on the concepts that god encapsulates, which can be weird, particularly when a lawful good Spellscale is expressing some aspect of Tiamat, the very evil dragon god. As I read through the descriptions of Spellscales, this is a whole race of beings who seem more likely to have a pretty fuzzy alignment, with moments where they shift almost entirely according to the current beliefs and the needs of the here and now. In fact, there is a specific anecdote about how a vital contract between some Spellscales and two other populations is broken with impunity by the Spellscales in accordance with their own strange customs, and a suggestion that, yeah, Spellscales are flaky, unreliable, inconsiderate, and do express their arrogance of dragons. They are narcissistic, may double-cross you at any time without apology, but perhaps with some sense of regret for their own loss of trust, loss of friendship, loss of that bridge that they just burned. Their attitude to other races is fairly interesting. On the whole, they consider dwarves to be slow and quite predictable. The elves have an admirable grace and a love of magic, but they're too academic about it. The gnomes just don't seem to have a point. Humans are deliciously adaptable and diverse. Half-orcs are crude but fascinatingly capable, and halflings are simply delightful. Spellscales seem to enjoy the company of halflings and half-elves the most. I imagine they also find tieflings, warforged and such to be quite wonderful to watch, and may occupy their downtime between adventures simply finding ways to involve themselves in helpful ways while taking opportunities to get a closer look and ask personal questions, studying these people, thinking about what life might be like from their point of view, moulding their own attitudes and philosophies, even emulating them for a while, trying on their cultural qualities and adopting some of their fashion sense. This could be flattering, pesky, or even kind of sinister. Depends on the Spellscale, I suppose. Spellscales exhibit all the best characteristics of dragons in a compact humanoid form. They wear their wealth and tend to live a fairly lavish lifestyle. After all, as natural-born sorcerers with a very high proportion of arcanists in their population, they tend to accumulate a lot of wealth, so ostentation, fashion quirks, and eclectic styles are their hallmark. No Spellscale will leave an adventurer with just one or two sets of clothes, and they have a habit of spending their money just as quickly as they acquire it. They love games of all kinds, but games that mix chance and skill are their favourite, particularly card games such as Three Dragon Ante. Finally, it's possible for a sorcerer whose powers stem from Draconic blood to undergo a permanent ritual transformation into a Spellscale. There is no going back from this, and from that point on their offspring will also be full-blooded Spellscales. This ritual is rare and its use is even rarer, but Spellscales accept such individuals without question. As for actual dragons, Spellscales admire and revere dragons, ever curious about them. They feel no particular attraction to them though. A Spellscale is naturally interested when presented with an opportunity to investigate a dragon's lair or converse with a friendly dragon, but while a Spellscale will acknowledge the link between themselves and dragons, they view themselves as something apart from dragons, and possibly, in a small way, superior. They view themselves as creatures of magic. For them, the day they cast their first spell is more important than their actual birthday, and they have some funny folklore about their origins and reasons for existing that, in a nutshell, says that magic is sentient and created the Spellscales as gifts to those sorcerers who honour magic. I could go on about them all day, but I think that gives you a pretty good idea of who and what the Spellscales are. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section below. If you have not yet checked out this Kickstarter I am running right now, please do. The link is down below the video in the description section. Every bit of support that you give me on this project is another step closer to getting amazing Silicon gaming gear in the hands of those who need and deserve them. So even if you just want to throw a few coins at me in the tip jar, that is an option to support the Kickstarter as a donation. Nobody is charged any money until the Kickstarter reaches its funding goal, so feel free to pledge now. I really need your help to spread the word as well. So if you can't support even a small donation, posting a link or sharing it with a friend also helps out a lot, and I really, really appreciate your help. Please hit the like button if you made it this far, subscribe if you like what I do, check out my Subscribestar or Patreon for all the full scripts for these videos, which now display correctly as the subtitle tracks for these videos, buy some Teespring merchandise, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.